Hello guys and girls and whoever you are, here is Rauta with yet another Underground Trio episode. So once again, 3 different albums, 3 different parts of the world and 3 different styles. These are all of course smaller ones, which means they don't have that many releases out, hence they are here on Underground Trio. And as always, we'll go through my personal worst to best ranking, because that would leave the sugar on the bottom of the glass. None of these are crap, that's given. None of these are outright great. But everything falls between that, so decent and quite good in fact. Let's start with the band coming from Sweden. This is Sodomisery with an album called Mazzaroth. Now, this is kind of a funny. First of all, let's start with the band name. Since whenever misery and Sodom have been in the same sentence, I mean Sodom, kind of a act where you put it, whether you're thinking about the band or the sexual activity, when it's leading to this part here. I don't know, but these guys maybe know something that I don't. Anyway, another funny thing is that this band sounds from the very beginning so goddamn Swedish that if this would have been from somewhere else, I would have been, color me shocked. Everything here is sounding like, yes, we're coming from Sweden and this the way we are gonna play. And I'm not gonna say that in a bad way. It's just more like a neutral statement to say, yes, a lot of bands know how to sound Swedish, especially when they're coming from Swedish. And this applies to melodic black metal, melodic death metal, bunch of death metal bands in the Sunlight Studio sound, and bunch of other styles as well. But I mean, nobody from Sweden is like, hey, we're doing thrash metal. Mind you, there are some really good ones coming from that. But the point here is, these kind of bands are almost like, yes, we're gonna try sounding Swedish, and that's about it. And this case is melodic death metal. Now on Metal Archive's site, this is actually labeled as melodic black death, but let's be honest about it, there is very, very little black metal to do with this kind of stuff. So let's just go with melodic death metal. Sometimes it means, yes, there is a certain flirtation with the kinds of like Amenamoth and the like, but this is no copycat of that. More so, this is like tapping to the very, very typical default sounding Swedish bands, doing melodies, a little bit soothing ballad-like moments here and there, and then going for aggressiveness, that back and forth for around 30 minutes and then some. Now, everything is kind of a pro-made. I mean, there are no obvious flaws with that. Whether we're talking about the production, guitar sound, vocals, everything here is like, yeah, cannot really bitch about it. I mean, the guitar sound could be a lot better, but overall it just goes quite okay. The vocals, once again, they could be more intense, more powerful with their growlier, raspier takes, but in the end it's more like, yeah, can't really complain about it. This is way beyond your typical demo phase. And as such, it's kind of a typical first album also, because none of here reeks of originality or super catchy parts or like, this is very, very memorable. Everything here is sound like bulk stuff from Sweden. So whether you go for the black metal or death metal or something between, or just melodic metal, melodic death metal in case, this is like, hey, yeah, everything here is very, very Swedish. It's like, I don't know, meatballs and mashed potatoes kind of stuff. This is the kind of a IKEA melodic death metal kind of a thing. Not the best quality, but for the buck, you're getting what you're expecting for, so can't really complain about it. It's just not the best in the pile, but also not bad. So very listenable, but something tells me that these guys will be better after, I don't know, a couple of albums maybe. So while the name kind of sucks, to be honest, at least these guys have something potential, something that will make them on the map of metal some point later on. Then we go to Germany, and this one is Diabolic Night, who released quite a good album, quite potential album a few years ago, and as such I was expecting some kind of a step up from that. Now, comes with a very, very nice packaging, mind you, High Roller Records, much like the previous album. this isn't exactly a step up. This is more like more from the same table. That is, no big improvements here or there, but more like, yes, you like the first one, you're gonna like this one. If you didn't, you're not gonna like that one. Now, this is a band that can be easily mislabeled. Some call it black speed metal, black heavy metal, and all that stuff. I would say this album actually is more like black thrash metal, whereas the first one was definitely more on the black heavy, black speed, what have you. And while not the big changes are not happening here and there, these are more like minor adjustments, maybe more intensity, aggression, and all that stuff. And it's not for the worst. It's still just, in my opinion, a little bit work in progress. What I'm saying here is these guys are like nodding into the past. If the first album was more towards 80s, this is definitely more about 90s. There were a couple of bands that just came right into my head when I was listening to this. I was thinking, how come this sounds so goddamn familiar here and there, even though this is my first or second spin with the album. And, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention the title, and here it is, obviously. Beneath the Crimson Prophecy, whatever it means. Sounds like a wordplay of I Read in the Sky is Ours. What I'm saying here is, this sounds in a way very, very German. And that is because this album sounds another German band, Disaster. Now, Disaster might have started with rather cheesy keyboard-infused black metal with their debut album back in the days, but already with their second album they kind of pushed the gear into another setting, which mean adding a lot of trashier parts, and in my opinion improving the band a lot. And since then they have been one of the groundworks, the foundations of German black thrash. No, I'm not talking about the pioneer bands like Creator, Sodom, Destruction kind of stuff, but more into the 1990s kind of a black thrash stuff. Basically Disaster being somewhat of a German equivalent to whatever, Au Noir was doing with the Norwegian types. Not as trashy maybe, but not pure blood black metal either. And this is tapping to the very same vein. And that's where I was like, okay, now I'm getting how this album sounds so familiar. On top of that, there are parts where this reminds me of Destroyer 666. Maybe not as heavy metal-like, maybe not as diverse, but there are parts when this reminds of that stuff. And this is of course a good thing if you like the bands, Disaster or Destroyer 666. Just don't expect this to be as catchy, as honed and polished and all that stuff, as experienced. However, if you like the first album, there is no reason to skip this one. In my opinion, rather promising one, but still in the making, in the process. Which leads us to the third and the best album of the pile, and this comes from France. Lunar Tombfields, An Arrow to the Sun. What an ominous title, with not so ominous cover, I guess. But this band name is still weird. Lunar Tombfields, like you have graveyards in the moon? I don't know. Anyway, these guys are now here with a new album, obviously. And the previous one wasn't that good. In my opinion, was kind of a work in progress kind of a band, like decent-ish, but far away from being good. And this is a big step up from that, because now these guys are actually doing a good release. This full album is something that sounds kind of a French, but not overly melodic, but definitely having the kind of a French stuff. And I'm not talking about the French Les Légions Noires kind of a rawness, but the modern French black metal. So there are parts where this is fully atmospheric, parts where it's kind of a more melodic, parts where it just slows down, and parts which are more like, let's put up the intensity, let's go with the fast pace and all that stuff. Now, because of this diversity, these variations, I think the album is very, very well balanced. Now, the only thing this actually lacks, I mean, the production, vocals, everything here is like, yeah, why not? I mean, it's not maybe the best in the game, but very, very good. So the one thing that this album also is missing is the certain level of catchiness and memorability. And I think partially that is because a lot of these songs, I think only one track is shorter than, say, 5 minutes. A lot of these tracks are around 8 minutes or so, which leads us to the problem. When you go full Orion, this is a Metallica reference for the younger audience. you kind of have to understand that it's harder for human brain to really get focused and, remember the patterns the way the musician does, and in order to keep the kind of a memorability. So in order to, understand how rock and roll music, for example, or pop music works, you have like 3 to 4 minute songs. And during that time, you kind of spin the whole song a couple of times. You have the riff A or 2, maybe chorus part or bridge and then chorus part or whatever, and you kind of keep coming back. My point here is a lot of these songs by whatever kind of a band sometimes do, I wouldn't call it a mistake, but for the sake of argument, do this flaw that you have too many riffs, too much stuff going on in one song, and then you kind of lose the ball in the middle. It's almost like sometimes you watch sport and nothing really is happening. Nobody's doing goals or points or scoring, whatever. And then you're like, why am I even watching this? Like, where's the action? That is my only problem with the album. I know I might sound a little bit harsh here, but this is just to exaggerate in order to make a point. So it's like, I'm not fully bald. I could be baldier, and I'm not exactly having a real short hair either. So it's in the middle. My point here is sometimes you just kind of have to go to the far end of the thing in order to make a point. And in my case, Lunar Tombfields could be a little bit better even if they just focused, made the songs more structured in a way. It's more focused attempt, more to the core. I don't know if that makes the sense, but I hope you get the point. Anyway, all I'm saying, we have here one decent-ish melodic death metal one. Then we have decent black trash kind of a release, and then a good black metal album. All different styles, but then again, I could imagine one and the same person liking them all. But since these are different genres, obviously you decide for yourself which ones you prefer, and links are provided in the description box. If you don't like any of them, don't blame me, and if you like all of them, also don't blame me. I mean, it's all better for you, with the exception of you spending money on these babies. So, there you have it. Go check out the ones you like, and let me know if you like any of them. Let me know if you like all of them, or whatever. Thanks for your time with the review and all. Go forth and listen to more metal, more reviews coming your way. Bye bye.